I have to admit, it was probably one of the darkest convention speeches I'd ever seen. It had an anger and frankly an almost dystopian quality that was unusual in the history of these kind of speeches.
What's interesting about that is it doesn't seem to match with the facts. You know, if you just take a couple of examples, he said the unemployment rate is up. That's not true. It's not. He said the murder rate is up. That's not true. It's not. It's gone down. So why do you think he's able to kind of, zero in on this dystopian view when in many ways the U.S. is in a good place?
Well, for a couple of key reasons. One is that, fear is far more powerful a force for galvanizing people than joy. And fear is the predominant feeling that he's both selling and responding to. And I think that the fact is that facts are not as important as feelings. And among all the candidates who ran, and unfortunately we have to include Secretary Clinton in this, he was better at tapping into and fomenting the kind of powerful feelings that have gotten him where he is right now.
It was interesting to hear him say that he would suspend immigration from any country compromised by terrorism. So he didn't mention banning Muslims specifically. Do you think that that's significant in terms of a slight change in his approach to that issue?
No, I don't. I think that it's still this confusing mishmash of policy and possibilities linked to, again, feelings. I mean, it's almost like you were listening to a dark side student body president speech. I mean, it was an awful lot of things that are going to happen right now, but virtually no plan for how to get it done, and just sort of an angry, bitter rant about the situation in the United States that, as you pointed out, isn't exactly factual, but it responds to the feelings that he's trying to whip up among people.
And then the question becomes, well, a country compromised by terrorism, so would you not allow people from France to immigrate to the U.S.? I mean, how does all that, as you say, there's no plan there. But does that matter? Does it matter to voters if they don't hear more specifics on policy?
Well, it hasn't yet, but frankly, I don't think you can get between here and November with just being the I promise and the I promise candidate. I guess that's the best way to put it. No, I mean, I think that what will happen is that at some point, especially in the debates that will be coming up, the three debates, he will have to start providing some substance beyond the slogans. And a bitter campaign is going to get even more bitter. I mean, I got to tell you, I am so envious of your 78-day campaign. Where do I sign up?
And you know what? That was about 3 times longer than it usually is.
Oh, I know. I mean, I read the comments. I mean, but trust me, if you considered that torture, imagine our 19-month campaign.
Let me ask you this, though. You talk about how he'll have to get more specific. Why does the truth not seem to, I mean, you can say that politicians, don't always tell the truth or they spin things, but, Donald Trump could be accused of not telling the truth on very fundamental issues, and yet that doesn't seem to matter. What's going on there?
Well, what's going on is that people want to be validated, not informed. And to the extent that they are validated, that their feelings are validated, then facts become inconvenient. And I don't mean to make it sound like, I'm somehow bitter or resentful, or for that matter, blaming people who are supporting Donald Trump. It's far more complicated than that. It's just that the way that forces in society have moved, we watch news to be validated. We don't watch it to be informed. And so since, here, Canada, wherever you are, you can watch any media you want that will support your beliefs rather than something that informs you. And this is the end result of that phenomenon.
Do you have concerns, just from listening to some of the words and the tone in his speech last night, that is Donald Trump committed to democratic values, or, there were moments where it felt as though he almost, he was speaking as a strong man?
Well, no, I mean, there have been several times where, we wonder if he's running for president or Cadillo. And I think that the
And you're not kidding.
no, I'm not. No, I'm not kidding. And in fact, I wish I were. I wish that those days of grinning or frankly insulting people who wanted to inject, fascist or Nazi or whatever into a conversation were truly wrong. It's just that there's something fearful about this notion of throwing law aside and simply responding to feelings. And you know, it was like watching one of these teen dystopian movies where there was this sort of frisson, this almost emotional mob scene, if you will, and it's disturbing. It really is.